it was all good for me.
All right, it's all good. So hopefully, Jeff Bulls, thanks for letting me know that you guys didn't have any sound. Hopefully, we're all set in here today. You guys hear Rob says he took it easy for Thanksgiving. Well, I'll tell you what, this Thanksgiving was a little bit different. You guys let me know that are watching if you can currently hear me on your social media platforms. Thank you. Okay, they said thank you. We're all good. I appreciate you guys directing us as we continue to strive to get this together. All right, this Thanksgiving was so much better. I felt like we actually had a holiday season, Rob. Last year my mom she made Thanksgiving dinner, and we had to bring our dishes, so we brought our dishes to the house. And then she made to-go containers and shipped us out. Like, all right, see y'all. Don't bring none of that COVID up in the house. But this year, we were all vaccinated. And I know my brother and I, we were fully boosted. I told you we got that booster shot.
Oh, good.
The day before Thanksgiving. And so we were all together. We had some time to get together. We enjoyed each other. It was a good time.
That's great.
And, it was limited because some of our family is still on the brinks of getting this vaccination. So, we still had ourselves kind of in our personal family bubble, but it was a nice time just being able to get together, relax, take the mask off, breathe a little bit, relax, watch some football and all of that other good stuff. Whatever. For those of you who are here, hey, I'm not a hater. So you're right, Jeff. Go blue. Whenever there is an out-of-state rival that we're playing and Michigan wants to ignore its little brother, Michigan State, who continually whips their behind, I might add, Rob. We are continually showing you that you can never underestimate your younger brother. And we've been smacking that behind year after year after year. So now that that's off the way, but I say, hey, kudos to the big brother, the University of Michigan, on putting it on those Ohio State Buckeyes. Give it to them. Y'all did it. I appreciate that. Great job. All of you Wolverines. You've done your thing, so we want to appreciate you as well. But Rob, so the holiday has started. Black Friday has been back in session. I didn't know what exactly to expect because this has been crazy because right before this holiday season started, we had this release that, our numbers are going through the roof. Here in Michigan, we're leading the nation in terms of COVID cases. Right. And it appears that everyone's just kind of like, we don't care anymore. If we're going to die, we're going to die. Let it happen. Throw off the restraints and let's move forward. It was funny because I heard, the governor, they asked the governor, well, what are you going to do? And she says, I'm not going to do anything. She says, because the Republicans have stolen and taken away all of my emergency powers. So we're going to hope they have a plan to rescue the country from these arriving.
And paying attention to this new Omicron variant.
Man, it's out there. It is here. What's up, my man, Terry? I know you've been on the road. Great to see you back in this great old city of Saginaw. So this stuff is happening, man. All of this stuff is going to. I didn't know if Black Friday was going to be a thing again this year. But let me tell you what I appreciate. And if you are listening today, I want you to know that I really appreciate those stores. The stores said, listen, we're going to let people spend some time at home. We have learned, hopefully, that through COVID, that spending time with family is one of the lost arts that we have a need to recoup and bring back to life. You know what I'm saying? We need to get back to spending those times, playing board games, talking with families, getting to know one another and spending just a little bit of time of pulling off the lid. A lot of times we just kind of bump into each other because we're so busy. But this year, the store said, we're not going to interrupt that holiday season time with your family. So let's make sure that we spend some time. So I really appreciate it, not having my family run out the door to get some special, Black Friday discount deal. The stores waited to a decent time, 6 a.m. the next day, and the lines were around the corner. Really? Oh, my God, Rob. I hate stores. I don't like going on this Black Friday Friends. They've done it a couple of times, check it off the list. But I had to go to Menards to pick up something for something I was doing. And when I tell you the lines were, the parking lot was packed, but the lines were just, and people were like packed in, no mask in these places, shoulder to shoulder. Really? And I was like, this is crazy. I'm not doing this. So I'm like running down aisles, trying to avoid people to get to where I needed to get and slide out this, the shortest line to get my stuff. I don't know what happens, but if what they've said is true about how this thing spreads, we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. We are really in trouble. I've seen the games that were on TV the day before Thanksgiving, which is supposed to be the biggest bar night, Drinksgiving, whatever they call it. Bars, according to what my reports were, and I've asked people, they say they were packed, no mask. It's going to be interesting. So we're praying that for the best as we move forward. Now there is, as you said, this new Omicron virus that is out there. Now, I'm kind of Ronnie Jackson, who's a GOP representative from Texas, Rob. He says, here comes the MEV, referring to a midterm election variant. The Democrats will do anything to steal an election or cheat an election. Now, this is the problem that we're having. This coronavirus is a public health crisis. We've been saying this forever. Right. And now it has become so politicized that even a variant that is making, hey, this is the African variant. You know, hey, when stuff come out of Africa, you know, it'd be potent. So this is the African variant that is coming out, and we're not sure exactly what the impact will be of this. Right. It has now been labeled the Omicron variant. Right. You know, they go through this whole Greek lettering system.
Except Omicron's not the last letter of the Greek alphabet, but still.
There you go. So Rob is going to keep us on that one. But we see this happening, and I want you guys, family, come on, listen to me. Let's take care of ourselves. You know, we cannot afford to have another year like 2020 with all of the losses that we have with family members and friends.
The virus is there's rumor and rhetoric that's saying that people who are vaccinated are spreading the virus, which is not necessarily the case. The case is that people who are not vaccinated are spreading it or helping to spread it because we're trying to get a herd immunity right now. We can't get that. We can't crush this thing because people are refusing to get vaccinated or get the booster shots as needed. And so they refuse to practice social distancing, refuse to practice washing hands, things of that sort right now. So this thing's going to keep spreading and breaking off as it can because it can.
And I'll let you know, anytime a virus has an opportunity to stay in a host, it finds a way to attack that genome, study it, replicate it, and then find a way to create a new variant. So let's be smart. I mean, we got 2 weeks. We'll know the danger that we'll be in as a nation. But I want to get to this last Donald Trump. Oh, Donald Trump Jr.
Who?
Donald Trump Jr. Not the daddy, but the son. Is his name Donald Trump? Yes, Donald Trump Jr. Yes. This clown, and he gets the clown crown. I'm going to bring that one back. I haven't used that one in a while, Rob. Donald Trump Jr. gets the clown crown. He was on one of the pundit shows, one of the radio shows, and he was saying he doesn't understand why the Americans are not paying attention to what's happening in Europe. In Europe, they are rioting, they are rebelling, they are overthrowing, they are fighting against getting this, being mandated to get this vaccination. And he says, and here in the United States, we are sleeping like lambs going to the slaughter. And I said, first of all, I was upset by that, that reference to a biblical scripture in the madness of causing people to violate or to overthrow their government. Hello, we've had one of those. We call it the January 6th insurrection.
Yes.
And while your father and yourself and others are being investigated for that, I would say just a little legal advice. Watch yourself, buddy. But I just thought it was the craziest thing that he is now once again encouraging an upheaval of our government. We've got to be aware of what's going on because history has a tendency to repeat itself when we don't do anything different.
You know, America being the quote unquote leader of the world, if anything's happening overseas, they're taking a cue from us. You know, they're watching us on how we're going to handle this whole constitutional crisis we had back in January.
Well, you know, they be wilding out over in Europe. You know, you ever see Parliament and all? They throwing stuff and fighting. They let's get ready to rumble. Parliament is now in session, so it's kind of crazy. But I want to talk about this really quick, and we're going to talk, like I told you, today's topic will be losing our identity, and I want to showcase the Fair Hope Benevolent Society. The Benevolent Societies, we talked a little bit about them on my other show, Robert, but never on this particular
Black
show.
Benevolent Society.
Yeah, the Black Benevolent Society. So I want to talk a little bit about those on today, but I want to end the part of the show with what's on my mind with this. Ahmaud Arbery's the murder trial from Arbery. We know that it was Greg McMichaels, Travis McMichael, and Bill Bryan, the three vigilantes from in Georgia, the white man that figured they would see a man driving, 911 call. What's the emergency? There's a black man running in my neighborhood. and we understand this is the conversations, the things that have happened in our community, things that we're used to.
Right.
When you walk down the street, you cross the street, and there's, the doors start locking.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do it, Rob, just for fun. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. Sometimes I'm petty Kareem.
Yep.
So people walk past I lock my doors and just look at them and clutch your pearls, right? But anyway, so they were all found guilty of the 9 charges that they were facing: malice murder, 4 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. And I would just like to say, I'm glad that the criminal justice system got it right. I'm glad the justice system got it right, because we did, justice is him coming back. We won't see that. But we saw a case that actually came to the right conclusion. Now, here is the issue that I look at with this whole situation. And if you're listening to me, I want to know some of your feedback as well. This was a real situation for many of us, because what we saw, Rob, was for the first time we saw a situation in which we weren't really sure that there was going to be an adequate response, an outcome from this jury. We have this particular area in Georgia, which is, I guess they say 27% Black. And of the 12 jurors, we had 1 individual that was Black. This shows you how the system, we got to the right verdict,
right? But
the fact of the matter, this is why there is such a need for an undoing and an upheaval of the system. And we got to build something better. You want to build something, build back better, build this back better, because what we're dealing with right now is atrocious. It's unacceptable, and it is in need of great reform.
It starts with us getting out to vote.
Absolutely.
Educating ourselves on what's going on in the system here. Listen to programs like this, and then doing your own research and educating yourself so you can go out and vote, know why you're voting, why you're not voting for the other person, why you're voting against the other person, and why you're voting for the person or issue that you're voting for.
If what you do is vote for other people, I vote against people. I don't really vote for an issue. But it was just like, okay, so we had 1 individual that was an African-American, and we're 13% of the population nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular area, they're 27%, and we could only find 1 Black juror. All of the Black jurors were dismissed for various reasons. 1 was kept, and it was just the craziest situation. We saw a lot of whistleblowing. I wouldn't even say whistleblowing. Whistleblowing, dog whistling is when you blow and they can't hear it. There's a secret sound, but this was like bullhorning. Just in terms of how the defense handled the case, stating, I don't want all these Black pastors. Yeah, all of these things that would draw people out. And so they were really trying to trigger or really appeal, thinking like, oh, we got us. One of these boys is going to be a good old Southern boy up on this jury, or a Southern gal. And, really trying to appeal to the worst common person that we are. And so they bet wrong. They judged by the facts. Maybe there was some good old boys, but I think seeing the case and seeing the issues and understanding, what the real thing was. Something was, stolen. Was something stolen? Did he steal something? No. Was something missing? No. Why did you chase him? Because he was running and he wouldn't stop. I told him to stop. I want to talk to you. What gives you the right? And this is what I'm saying as a Black man. You couldn't have a brother. And this guy was 25 years old. At 25 years old, I was like, burn it all down.
Mm-hmm.
At 25 years old, I was in my Malcolm Farrakhan stage, and there was no way in the world that you were going to allow something like this to happen and me not go crazy. So when in the part of the, a lot of people say, he's fighting the guy after being chased nearly 3 miles. And this is how long they were following him and cutting him off and careening the cars and chasing them. He's changing direction. He realized in that moment, I am being haunted like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
The stories of Trayvon Martin, the stories of all of the other individuals that have gone before him, that had died before him, were fresh in his mind. We're telling our kids, you got to be careful because, certain things happen. And when you see a group, and I've had this happen to me in Oil City, and I'm going to tell you exactly the city. Oil City, coming back from Mount Pleasant. What was the name of the club out there? The Wayside in Mount Pleasant. Me and 3 of my cousins were in a car, and we had some hillbilly wranglers that jumped behind us and were chasing us down with chains and saying they were going to kill us. We were able to just speed away in the car that we were driving, but we've seen this before. We've heard about it. We've, had our parents warn us about these types of episodes. So this is nothing knew. So
Right.
this young man died being afraid and fearing for his life, being tracked down like a mongrel, like an animal, that they're chasing in heat. And so this was absolutely crazy. But when we saw this, we could recognize this as something that we could deal with. And so he had gotten to a place, he said, look, I'm not running no more. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die fighting. And that's what I believe we see in those videos. And people ask me, why would he fight a man with a gun? Because he knew that he was going to die either way.
Right.
And had it not been for the videos, they wanted to video their catch. Now the thing is that when you go deer hunting or you're shooting after that buck, they want to videotape that moment when they caught their buck. And so Mr. Brian, with his wise self, jumps in the car and he follows them and he videotapes this entire episode. His question was, did you get him? Like they were shooting at a buck. And so they got him. But unfortunately, the video that you used that thought, hey, here he is fighting, was a thing that brought conviction your way. Congratulations, Georgia. You finally got it right. We thank you all. And hopefully we can start to see some more additional. Let this thing ring on. But there's so many issues. And we look at the discrepancies, what happened with the Kyle Rittenhour case up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and what's happening down here in Georgia. This allows us to know that there is still a need for greater change. Change must come to these systems. All right. So I want to thank you for that, Robin. I don't know if we have a commercial break or if I can just get right into it. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to continue this conversation about Black America losing our identity. And we're going to use, just for an example, Fair Hope, Benevolent Societies, the Black Benevolent Society. Stay tuned with more of Straight Talk. All right, we are back, and I want to just give a little shout out. Frank Sanders, that would have been a totally different story without the video evidence. You are so right, my brother. Jeffrey Bulls comes in as he always does. It would have been no story. The local DA ignored the case as a favor to her buddies who killed Ahmaud. You are absolutely right. That is still an ongoing investigation on what took place and how there was such a long period of time that mother was crying out for justice, and there would have been absolutely no charges. Had not been for that video, it would have been another lynching in the backwoods of Alabama or backwoods of Georgia, as we have seen so many times. It's interesting because this case, as well as the George Floyd case, the reason why these individuals were found guilty was not because of what took place. If there had not been video in George Floyd's case, we would not have seen a guilty verdict come out of that.
It's a whole new meaning to video, or it didn't happen.
Hey, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a black man still has to fight for his justice. And we see that if not for video, that third eye, because what I think and what you think, our eyes may don't matter, but what that video camera shows and what it has presented in both cases are the reason that we were able to see some form of the justice system stand up and fight on our behalf.
It just didn't work in the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Well, there's an obvious difference there. Right. You know, and I said this on last week, and this is what I learned. And people can get mad. I don't care. This is straight talk. I'm gonna give it to you straight, no chaser, no filter. If you don't like what I say, complain to the station, and they'll let you know that the visions and the thoughts that are expressed are the opinions of Kareem Bowen and not a part of this station. But the fact of the matter is, and I think Jeffrey Bulls, who's out there, we've had this conversation. When you, as good intending white people, are good allies, when you come to the rescue of a black man and black issues and black causes, then what I've learned from this particular situation is that your justice becomes the same or equal to that of Black America.
Right.
So you get black justice, and you know, I'm sure they're shocked and they're amazed. How in the world can you say that this was, you know, self-defense? Because this is what has happened in all of the cases across the South with so many young black men and black women. Oh, the reason why Breonna Taylor shot, he shot first. You're breaking in my house in the middle of the night with no knowledge of who you are.
Welcome to our world.
I shoot, you shoot back. It's self-defense in her own private dwelling. So white America, those who were a part and really thinking that Kyle Rittenhouse was going to Rittenhouse was going to be found guilty, are lost and amazed because they thought that the criminal justice system worked. But what you realize is this is what black justice looks like. And if you're going to lean in for us, and we appreciate it, I want to say this by all means, that there is not going to be any movement of this needle in terms of what needs to take place unless we have allies. We were never able to do anything in the civil rights unless we found allies. But allies, you will know that when you step up and you say that you're going to be allies to the black community, that our justice becomes your justice.
The mud that's on us is going to come on you.
And so welcome to the battle. Welcome to the fight. But it is what it is. You know, many white women have dated black men forever, and they've been called in lovers. And so you got treated with partial treatment the way that we were treated as a people. And it is what it is.
Why are you surprised?
We you know, I want to just say, you know, thank you all. And I ain't trying to, you know, sling no mud, but, you know, the truth hurts. And sometimes you got to just swallow the truth with a tall glass of water and just recognize that it is the truth. And until we do something different, that's what we're dealing with. All right, so let's get into our conversation on today. And I'm excited because I want you all to know that this conversation started with this morning. I got up and I noticed that I got an email. And I was like, this is a crazy email. So I shot a message to my cousin and I said, yo, cuz, did you send me a video, an email with a video? She's like, no, it wasn't me. So I started investigating and I realized that she had asked, my cousin Epaith had asked that all of the family members send out a video. And I hope this is, I don't think she's going to hear it. Send out a video for a special cause or a special occasion that's coming up. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I sent her back, hey, this is what this was. And we were talking. I was like, hey, you up? She's like, hey, well, it's my birthday today too. So I gave her a call. You're free? Okay. I gave her a call. And so we started talking, and in our conversation, and Jeff, I want to get to your point. So I'll read it really quick. And now the National Police Association just launched a Stop Filming, Stop Helping campaign nationally. No thanks. Keep recording. You have the right to video anything that happens. There is no officer that is in this land that can stop you from recording. Please. Now, Jeff, that's the kind of stuff that we need to share with our young boys and our young girls, because they'll say, stop. I want you. I'm the officer so-and-so. I want you to stop recording. But we need to make sure that you continue to record, because that may be the only way that you get justice. So let's keep those cameras up. Keep your cameras up. Lil Kim said, keep your lighters up. But no, let's keep those cameras up. Keep them rolling. And just always make sure you're not reaching for a camera. put it in position before the episode starts, because we don't want to have that camera become, oh, they were reaching for a weapon and no weapon be found unless they have time to plant one. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for that statement. But so I'm talking with my cousin, Essie Pate, and you know Essie Pate, that she's been on this show. She's an actress.
Yes.
Best known for Law and Order, now Chicago Med. She's blowing up the screen and doing some amazing things. And so we were just talking. I gave her a call, saying happy birthday, and my Lou Rawls meets Don. What was the black guy?
Donnie Simpson.
No. All right, Sammy Davis. And my Lou Rawls meets Sammy Davis rendition. Yeah, Sammy Davis. So we were sitting there talking, and it came to me. I said, "Hey, cuz, I know you had talked about the Black Benevolent Societies. You know, what was it that you were doing?" And she gave me the name of her documentary that I think it was released in 2018. It has received all kinds of acclaim. And so I want, we began a conversation, and that led me to something that I think we need to share today. The title of her documentary was The Contradictions of Fair Hope. The name of the documentary was The Contradictions of Fair Hope. The director is S. Epatha Murkison and Raquel Metcalf, and it was starring Whoopi Goldberg. So there's some things out there, but if you catch that one, S. Epatha Murkison, Raquel Metcalf, starring Whoopi Goldberg, it is on Amazon Prime. So you can go watch it on Amazon and download it.
It came out in 2012, in case you missed it.
2011 is when they recorded. It came out in 2012,
right.
And they did some rendition of it in 2018. You're absolutely right, Rob. So as we look at this, we were talking, and so when we talk about the Black Benevolent Societies, and we've talked about them here, and not on this show, on the other show, on United Shades of Gray, which appears. Rob, give me the
United Shades of Gray, heard every Sunday from 7 to 8 on our sister stations, WSGW 790 AM and on WSGW FM 100.5.
All right. So he remembers that a lot better than I do.
That's my job. I work here.
All right. I appreciate it. All right. So when we talked about the show, we were doing so as an informative thing, as something that Black communities used to do. Now, this is actually something that the Jews did. Many of the people that were coming, they started these benevolent societies or equal, where societies where people would take care of each other. And so it became popular, and these things were all over the South, these Black benevolent societies. But I want to just talk about the one that is mentioned and the documentary really focuses in on, which is the Fair Hope Benevolent Society. It started from Fair Hope, I think Christian Baptist Church or something, but they started this Fair Hope Benevolent Society in 1888. Because what we found was that there were 3 areas that people could not do for themselves, 3 areas that the government wasn't helping, and things that were necessary for people to have that they could not do for themselves. And those 3 areas were food to sustain, because you got to think, now I'm free. They just kick people out. Yep. Slavery is over. They give you a bill. Hey, you are free. The Emancipation Proclamation set you free. And now they just left them out there. We had 4 million people. And I want to say this again. When slavery ended, there were about 4 million people that were then set free with no place to go, no job, no property, no land, no nothing. They were just set free and told, you're now free. So these individuals had a need for food. In case they were getting sick, there was no doctors that they could go to. They were not being serviced by hospitals and doctors. There were no insurance companies, as we saw. And there was no place to bury. So many Black folks were just kind of thrown in the ditch or left out to, be buried wherever. And so they started these Black benevolent societies, which allow equal treatment, which allowed them to come together. It became a force for Black people to take care so that no one was buried as a pauper. And so they found these ways. They didn't know how to embalm and stuff, but they would put salt upon the bodies because salt is a preservative. Mm-hmm. And they had these societies in which you could pay a small amount, like 5 cents, 10 cents, which to us seems minuscule. But when you don't have a job and when you don't have, any way to get a job, you don't have any land, you don't have any resources, 5 or 10 cents a year was a great deal of money. And we see that these societies then emerged in the South, and blacks were helping each other, taking care of one another. And so if you belong to a black church, especially the Baptist churches, or even the Pentecostal churches, there is a benevolent team or benevolent ministry. That's where we get that concept. And so what would happen is, if there were African Americans that were now freed that took ill, these individuals that were not doctors, but just kind of knew some basic practices and old wives' tale in terms of how to take care of you, they would stop by and they would visit, and they would, by two, they would come and they would visit you, and they would stay with you through your sickness. And they would take care of you and make sure that the fevers were down and those types of things. And so we see that now operational in our church. It's called the benevolent team or the benevolent ministry. And so these Black benevolent societies were essential to Black people being able to just simply survive. What was the catalyst? Slavery was the catalyst. Dred Scott, there was a Dred Scott case in there. And in that case, remember this, the case of Dred Scott.
Right.
All right. And one of the things that came out, there was a famous phrase that came out, that Black man had no rights that white man was bound to respect. Right. So we as Black men, we were considered, Black folks, period. We were basically nothing more than mere cattle. We were property.
Well, even wrote that in the Constitution. We were what, 3/5?
At 3/5 human, absolutely. Right. And so we were nothing more than property that was sown like cattle. We were a bargaining tool, something that you could sell and buy. They would put us on platforms like animals, and they would sell us, and oftentimes separating. We understand the story of slavery, and I don't have to go through all of that, but I think that when you get to the crux of what we're talking about, so very interesting. Separating families, mothers and children, husbands and wives, separating them. They had already been separated from their homeland. Now they've separated us on these auction platforms, basically exporting humans from one place to another, even across state lines. Yep. And this was okay. There was no slavery, and I don't care what anyone else tries to tell you. They'll try to tell you that what happened to the Irish when they were in Ireland. They'll try to tell you about the indentured servants. There was no slavery that existed on the planet that was worse than the slavery that our ancestors had experienced here in what we call America, the home of the free, the land of the free, home of the brave, excuse me. So we began to see, and I talked to you all about the theft of our identity and the loss of our identity. Much of what I'm sharing with you today and what I'm getting ready to share with you, as we look at these Black benevolent societies, this is a part of history that we don't hear about. This is a part of history that we don't talk about, Rob. There are so many pieces of history, and when a man loses his history, he loses his identity. And if we lose our identity, then we're in trouble, Rob. There are so many people. When you think about history, and you think about the lessons and the pieces of history that you learned as a man growing up in West Philadelphia, what are some of the things that you see that are lost in the sauce, got lost in being quote unquote Americans, that you wish we could still have as a part of it?
Well, actually, I grew up in four different areas of Philadelphia and 4 foster homes. And each of those foster homes, they did more at home than it did in the schools. We learned the history of our people were taught to me and passed down to me in the home itself, things I didn't learn in school. So Black history, anything you might have learned certain things about the Black Panthers or Martin Luther King, the same things, the traditional stuff they teach you in high school or junior high school. But the actual truth behind certain things as to what the Black Panthers were all about and what they were doing, for example, just using them as an example, were taught, and these are things that all the history of how families got separated, why they're separated, why we call each other brother and sister. You and I could be related. We just never know, because unless we do a whole genealogy, because we were separated and sold as, when our ancestors were slaves. A lot of things they don't teach you this sort of thing, which is why CRT is so important right now. But that's another issue.
Rob is always stirring the pot. Well, you could imagine that if you were married, you could not marry according to the government, because the government outlawed slaves from carrying into marriage. So what we would do is that's where the concept of jumping the broom came. Right. And so we are jumping the broom, and we are creating these unions that are, similes of what we once knew, because we were stripped from our identity, our land, and all of these other things. We come to this new country, and we were prevented from taking place and being a part of these key essential parts that are necessary for social growth and social and emotional empowerment. And so
communities, you talk about the village from the first time we started the show.
Absolutely.
The whole village concept was taught to me as to, why our community sticks together the way it does.
And so my thing is, we have so much that we have to begin to pump back into our village. When I look at the things that are happening in our community, Rob, my heart is broken because I see the violence that exists here. And we're going to talk how all of this comes into play, because capitalism is a key reason why we have some of the things in our community that we have. But it really ties into our loss of our identity, the theft of our identity as a people.
Right.
You've got to understand that first they took your name. When you came across the ocean, you lost your name, and they gave you the name that you now have. As a matter of fact,
you're not Kunta Kinte, you're Toby.
Yeah. Remember that in roots. Kunta Kinte. No, boom. They kept whipping him Toby. They wanted to change our name, and you need to understand that there's an importance of name. There's a reason why we have certain companies. Levi's. When we look at Levi's, that is not just a business, that is a family name.
Right.
When we look at the Sears, when we look at, different Walmart, when we look at these, Walmart is different because it's a company that is owned by a particular people, but these are names of people and identities that existed because people found the importance and they understood the importance of names. When you look, just go down to Bay City and look at some of those shops that have been there 100 years. What's that?
Trump is an example.
Absolutely. So there is a great power that exists when a people understands their history. So the first thing that happened, and I hope young people, if you're listening, please don't turn it to the next thing, but I hope you will lean in on this conversation. Parents, I hope that you would share this conversation with your young people. If you are a leader in the community, if you're in the education, we've got to begin to restore the history that has been lost and stolen. Because first, like I said, they took your name. Then the second thing they did is they took your language. We were not allowed to use the language that was natural to us, that was a part of our nature. When you go to Africa, and it's funny because I'm doing this program with Dow, and one of the ladies is from Kenya. And she's gonna shoot me if I get this wrong. She told me that the name of the language that she speaks, well, Swahili are the people, and so she speaks something Swahili. There's a word in front of it that means the language of the people. So Swahili are the people, and we refer to the language as Swahili, and it is that's the language that is native to those people. And so when they came and they took them from these countries, there was a whole nother language that existed. And the way that they can control a population is to stop their ability to communicate with one another. So if you can't communicate in your language, how else do I say to you, we getting ready to blow this joint, we up out of here, go wade in the water.
That's to keep control.
And so it was an element of control. And so, we need to make sure that we are teaching and we're raising our young people with the love and the passion and the understanding of what our history is. We've got to get them back to the basics of understanding that our Black is beautiful, and explaining to them that we are a resilient people that have come through the generations, from the backwoods, from the hills, and we have been able to forge through every opposition and still rise as a people. And people say this, well, what about President Obama? The fact that we can run a nation from being carried over here, not knowing our name, our identity, or our culture, but yet still be able to assimilate into your culture and then rise to the highest level, shows you the level of moxie that we have as a people. It shows you what we are capable of when we are able to just simply be left alone and to do what it is that we are able to do. And like Maya Angelou says, and I always think about this when I think about my people, my beautiful brown shaded people, that you can hold us down with your tattered toward the lies, but at the end of the day, like dust, still we rise. All right. So the first thing they did is they stole our they took our name. Then they took our language. Then they took our religion.
I was going to say that.
They took our religion. We were not studying Christianity and these forms of westernized religion. This is not what we did. This is not who we were as a people. Then they took our families. And lastly, they took our history. Edward Singleton, I see you. Your comment is, it's very interesting that this came up today. I'm just finding out my genealogy is over 60% from Nigeria, and I really want to find out more.
Sweet.
That is so powerful, Mr. Singleton. As a matter of fact, the same cousin. This is something that we talked about years ago, that she was talking about doing this documentary, and she just found out a couple years ago that our family, through my great grandmother, Mama Pearl, were sold into slavery from the Maryland area into Maringouin, Louisiana, to a plantation of farmers and by the Jesuit priests. So we've got to understand our history. We've got to understand that the moment that we lose our history, it becomes detrimental, because that loss of history, once our identity is stolen, that is the thing that is passed from generation to generation to generation, until we now have generations of young people like we see today, Rob. I was talking with a young man. Wow, so was my family. I got that in. So what I see today is, I was talking with a young man, and I need you all to understand how important this is. I was talking with a young man, and he says, am I just kind of dumb to the facts? And he was serious. Am I dumb to the fact, I don't really understand how, this is racist. I think, like, Black people say a lot of stuff is racist, but I really don't see how it's racist. I think that was just a bad decision or a bad choice, or maybe you should have did this differently. And so I had to school my brother. I'm always, if you're going to sit and listen, if you're going to come to me with some foolishness or ignorance, and that's what it is, ignorance. Right. And that is our responsibility as a people, because we have a responsibility to educate the village. And
I dare say, as a father, it's your responsibility as a parent to tell your children too. It's the same thing I do with my kid. Whatever they're teaching you in school, whether it's a Black school or white school or mixed, you're still responsible for teaching your history to your children.
But I'll tell you this: for a long time, we just wanted our kids to have a good education. And I think many of you that are out there, your idea was, I'm gonna send my kids, let them get a good education, because that's a part of the American dream. And so we strove and we assimilated and we moved into communities that didn't look like ours, but we thought that they were going, when they said that they were teaching our children history, we thought that they were teaching our children history.
If you don't ask your kids what you learn in school today,
but I mean, come on, kids ain't coming back home like, yes, Mom. But the fact of the matter,
that's how I was raised, though.
Absolutely, because we spent time at the dinner table. Right. Don't get me on the topic about how we need to have time at the dinner table. We spend so much time eating fast food and going to restaurants, but we miss the power and the impact of the dinner table. Mm-hmm. That dinner conversation, I could remember. My mom did this. Now, my mom was a single mom for a number of years, and I was raised by a stepdad and a single mom for a number of years beyond that. But my mom would make sure, when we were younger, we didn't have the best of everything. I grew up in St. Paul's Townhouse. I went to C.C. Coulter, so there's nothing amazing or mystical about her. She worked and pulled herself up and had support. We had support. Yes, we did have the welfare system, but even that, we had a stronger sense of community in my family. So I had uncles and aunts and grandparents who understood the importance of making sure that we had everything that we needed. You didn't have to. I don't care. Now, mamas, whatnot, now, Rob, you're going to get me on a whole. I ain't trying to go there today.
I'm just saying, though.
Rob. See, Rob was talking about clean clothes, because there's some stuff out there. Some of these mothers, they got one child and act like they can't survive. Mm-hmm. And it's so much, and woe is me. But I grew up, my grandmother had 9 children. And she was cleaning them and taking care of them and washing. Now, there's one thing that we never did. We ain't never left the home without having clean clothes, socks, and underwear. That's you need to have on a good pair of underwear. Why? Because if you get in an accident and you go to the hospital, that was a story. We learned these stories, but these things were the types of things that built character. Okay, right. Regardless of what they were grounded in, they built a sense of identity as who we were. Right. And even though I did not know my original name that my forefathers would have given to me as a part of my birthright, I felt a sense of empowerment and a sense of belonging, because my grandfather, Bowen, even though that's an English name, so some white slave owner named us Bowen, we had a new sense of identity in terms of who we were as a people, regardless of the name. Right. And there were some things that we were going to do and some things we were never going to do. And they began to instill in us a strong sense of character and identity and who you were as a person. And those are the things that we need to understand have been lost in the sauce of our capitalistic experiments. You need to realize that after the Emancipation Proclamation, we were set free in a capitalistic society without any capital, Rob. So where is the fairness in that? Where is the dignity in that? Where is the reparations as we talk about? And it's almost impossible to not have that conversation about when do we receive our just reward. The black man of any nation on this planet deserves reparations from the United States of America because we were a people who built, and folks tell me I hate when people say that the American government or the country was built on the backs of Black America. But the fact of the matter is, your plantations, your wheat fields, your cotton fields, your tobacco fields, your industry mill fields, and everything else were built on the labor and free sweat equity of my forefathers. And then I am set free to gain and to go forth in a capitalistic society. I love capitalism, but if you're going to allow me to pay the capitalistic game, then give me some capital to work with.
40 acres and a mule.
Man, we never got the 40 acres and moo to the mule, okay? Right. Amen. Oh, amen. And I see you out there. Y'all gonna get me going. I honestly want to make sure that we continue this conversation because this is so powerful. We always ate. This is Alma Collier. Thank you for listening. Amen. We always ate at the family ate family style, and we talked and we learned a lot. Well, let me tell you what I was able to do. So we're going to continue with this conversation about these Black benevolent societies. But growing up as a young man, I found myself always having conversations with my great aunt, Ann Bowen, which is Epatha's mother, with my grandfather, John Bowen, my grandmother, Bonsil Bowen. And I had the amazing opportunity as a young man to get to know and to be alive when my great grandmother, who lived in Marion, Alabama, Marion, Louisiana, was around. And so we would talk to her. She lived in the shotgun house across the street in Marion, Alabama, just not far from Baton Rouge, across the street from Levine. And so there was two ways that I could get from her house down to my great aunt Velma's house. It was either down the main street, which that meant you was going to have to deal with whatever came out of the bayou, or the ravine, whatever it was called, or the back way. There was a pathway that went the back way, which meant that you was going to be getting chased by wild boars. So, but just the stories of my grandfather, and there were 16 of them, and all of my great uncles that were, working the sugarcane. My grandfather was able to take me back and show me where, as a young boy, he worked on a sugarcane plantation, and he was able to show me where, my great grandfather worked as a slave, the son of a slave, and a sharecropper. So I was able to see these pieces of history, which really just kind of brought home this identity, the fact that no matter how much we Northern folks, and this is what happens, think that we have survived and we've come a long way, we are still a product of that past, and we need to embrace that past and share it with our children. And it's given me such an appreciation for the sacrifices that have been made so that I can have the opportunities to do the things that I do right here in life. All right, so we're going to continue with this conversation. So we understand that whole thing about the Emancipation Proclamation. 4 million slaves were freed by this proclamation after 246 years of American slavery. No home, no food, no shelter, no way to survive. And the crazy thing is that slave owners had absolutely no responsibility to take care of these slaves, which were now free. Now, I want you to know something. Abraham Lincoln signed this proclamation, right? We understand that. But his actual philosophy was he was actually negotiating, and this is a part of our history. You go look this thing up. He was actually negotiating and having diplomatic conversations with other countries about taking our Black slaves, because he had a fear that now that this war was over, that the Klan would rise up and begin to enslave us again, that they were actually considering taking us up and dropping us off to other countries. I guess, remove the problem after you had this long history of standing. Let's whitewash the book so that nobody knows this. But this is a part of the conversations. Check your history book. He wanted to make a change. And so he says, why don't we take these Africans and we will position them in different countries? Once again, removing us from the little history that we have known here for 246 years to cover up the issue that was taking place. And, the purpose, he said the purpose was to keep the Klan and other hate groups from coming back, attacking us, and enslaving us once again. But we need to understand that the entire economic structure of the South, now that the black man was free, has been destroyed because of the war. So many of the tobacco fields, many of those sugarcane plantations, many of the cotton fields, all of this stuff was destroyed, burned up, plantations completely destroyed because of the war. Rob.
No, yeah, I was going to agree with that because they didn't have the labor as well to bring it back all together. Now that the slaves were free, and that's why they would charge those who were servitude. Well, you want to come back to work with us, work for me? You got to go out there, but we charge you pennies on, whatever.
Yeah. So when we get to the idea of the Jim Crow, we now see that we were in fact going back to the same plantations that we were enslaved upon. But I want us to continue. So the Black Benevolent Societies from 1888, and this one in particular, the Fair Hope Benevolent Society, they began to take care of the needs that were in our community. And we see this strong sense of community vitality, rebuilding the village by caring for one another now takes place. And so if they were sick, they would send out 2 individuals, and those individuals would stay with that sick individual until they were better. If there were individuals who needed food, they were getting together baskets of nutritious food and making sure that families were being fed or coming in for meals. And if you were a part of the society, it was 5 cents, 10 cents sometimes, whatever those dues were, you had to pay them once a year, and they would come together every year. This particular one came together the 4th Sunday in the month of September. And this is important because this is going to show you how our history, when lost, it begins to diverge, and we begin to look like our oppressors, and we begin to oppress ourselves. And there was a physical slavery that existed for 246 years in this country that we now replicate. But instead of a physical slavery, it now becomes a slavery of the mind, which enslaves our people, which is more dangerous because the mind, as the Negro College Fund, United Negro College, is a terrible thing to waste. When we lose and our minds are enshackled, then we lose the ability to see a life that is beyond where we are. One thing as Black people that were shackled in physical chains, we could always envision a day and a time that was better than where we currently were at that time. And because of that vitality and that ability to dream, we were able to overcome the chains that kept us down physically. But when the mind is enchained and the mind has shackles on it, it keeps us from being able to see life beyond where we currently are. So what took place in this period of time, these societies were existing and taking care of each other. And eventually these benevolent societies, because so many of our young people, schools, this particular one, schools, the nearest school is 5 miles away. You don't have transportation. You don't have a way there. You don't have a horse and buggy. You don't have anything. You're just trying to survive. So it also became a place where folks who had some semblance of an education would return back. And this is where the concept of that one-room schoolhouse in our Black communities, where everybody came in from 1st to 6th to 8th grade, and you were taught in that room, you were taught how to read, and you were taught how to write by people who barely understood these crafts themselves. And so we were beginning to become important.
Sankofa.
Sankofa. And the idea of Sankofa, which is an African word, a proverb, that we reach back to our history as we reach forward to our future. And so we saw this thing taking place, and it was such a beautiful thing in our communities. And when you begin to look, there was usually a church house that was there because our faith became such a strong part of what was the thing that drove us forward, and we moved forward and we gravitated to that faith. And then there was also a cemetery. You see this 3-structured thing where there was a church, usually by a cemetery, and then there was a third building. And that third building was the Benevolent Societies building, where they would have their yearly meetings, usually once in this particular one, it was the fourth Sunday in September. So they continued this thing. So as they continued to go, we had this whole idea, Rob. The North was exploding with industrialization. There were new jobs. And when I say the North, I'm talking about, the northern area of Alabama. Our cities were exploding in industrialization. So there was a move from the the small cities, the backtown, backwoods. That's what I call them, backwoods. I told my girl, like, Lord, we in the backwoods, Louisiana. But I mean, really, Blackwood, snakes going across the street, scorpions coming in the house. It was really a trip. But it gave us character. But we were removing ourselves from these back for opportunities. We could now find jobs in the North. We could now find jobs in the big cities in these southern areas. And so we moved to these cities. And so this becomes a very important thing. What took place then is that as we left the South in the care of our older generational people. And so their sons and daughters moved to Michigan and Chicago and Illinois and New York and Philadelphia to make wages, but they were still coming back home. And so this Benevolent Society Day of Reunion was like a family day. Families were coming back who understood the history of the Benevolent Society, and they were coming back bringing their children because they hadn't been home in a year. So it became a sort of reunion where they were coming through, and they were showing how the change and why many of these others no longer existed. But here in this particular documentary, and you guys need to go out and download this documentary. It's on Amazon. Fair Hope Benevolent Society. It was written by my cousin, S.E. Pather Murkison and Rockwell Metcalf. Powerful. They showed how eventually, as those young people who were coming home, as they were getting older, now they're coming home with their children. Then they would bring their friends. You got to come down. This is a great reunion. Everyone's coming. Now you have folks who are not a part of the historical process, who don't understand the history, that are now coming back to celebrate. And soon it stopped from being just a church fellowship. And y'all know how y'all got to do. We got the church ones, the ones that's in the church, and the ones that's in the street. So you want to have your booze. So you go out into the field, and they were drinking moonshine in the fields and having church on Sunday. And so eventually over time, we had people that were coming back just for the celebratory purpose of it, just for putting up booths. And y'all know, wherever we have something, somebody want to sell a fish dinner, sell some jewelry and a necklace. And so that became the capitalism of it, became the major piece that was causing people to come back. And so now we have individuals who don't understand the history of the Benevolent Society, that it was rooted in a spiritual thing, taking care of one another, now bringing the idea of this nation, the capitalistic view, back to sell everything that you can. And now we see this particular Benevolent Society yet in operation, one of the last that exists. But the history of what it was founded for has now been tarnished because we have embraced capitalism so much that we've stopped understanding our history. And the history was lost on the people because they embraced the idea of capitalism, and we failed to tell the story of why it existed. And so in 2000, and I think it was 11 or 2019, they founded a 501c3 at this particular one, and they established a history, and they began to share the history of what it before it. Now I'm going to tell you, the fourth week, now it's a week long, the fourth week of September, every element of debauchery, prostitutes, gambling, everything that you can see that is a part of the capitalistic mindset, you can now find there. And they're trying to turn the stage by bringing back the history. Let's not forget our history is the story that I want you all to take away from here. Our history is so important. It shares the story of the struggle of sharecroppers and slave owners who made ultimate sacrifices for their children to benefit, to come to the North, to go to better schools, to have better opportunities. That much of what we have learned as a people has been lost in the struggle. I think we have a responsibility to tell the story. Let's tell it loud and proud. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week with more of Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen.